Hi, Raghu. Good evening. So, thank you so much for your time in joining this learning through discussion platform. So, it's been my long time thought process in bringing learning through discussion format, where you see how richer learning can be when you actually discuss and talk about life experiences, not the AI prompts and AI agents can actually bring on which you can get it over the internet. So thank you so much for joining in today.
Thank you so much, Aprajita, for inviting me to this. It's a pleasure, absolutely.
So, to begin, a childhood memory of yours that has shaped you to who you are today.
It's a very small incident that happened when I was in class second, and I we had in those times we used to have oral, English orals where you had to recite a poem or recite a passage, right? So I remember very well that when I was in second class second, in one of my exams we had a Hindi recitation exam. And I was not able to complete the poem, and I got zero out of absolute, like my report card. I think that's the only time in my life I've had a zero on my report card. And I came back home and I
Oh.
said, I don't know Hindi, I don't understand, I don't like Hindi, I couldn't say anything. And I remember my father telling me that, I'm going to coach you for an upcoming recitation competition and you're going to get first. I was like, I can't do it. I just can't. I don't like
Mm.
Hindi. And he told me one very interesting thing which has stuck with me till today. He was like, because at some point I said, all the others are more intelligent than me. And they were like, they all are born with one brain. Everybody is born with one brain. You don't have some,
Okay.
you know.
So, I also have one brain.
Yes, so everybody has the same brain, and it's only about how you use it and how you put it to use that makes a lot of difference. I think that's one thing that's sort of has stuck by me for my life that,
Wow.
nobody is more intelligent or less intelligent. It's only about the hard work you're ready to put in, smart work that you're ready to put
Yes.
in that makes a lot of difference, I think.
That too coming from your father, and you've
Yes,
been remembering it till date.
yes.
Beautiful. So, what's that instant mojo, like a quick burst of energy, confidence, or spark that helps you immediately feel motivated, creative, and ready to perform at your best? So, before you answer this question, so you'll have to tell me how you get it, how you keep it, and in case you lose it, how do you get it back?
That's a very nice question, and I think uh, it's a tough one to answer as well. I think I get my energy from people. I'm a very much a people person. I love being
Hmm.
around people, people who are creative, people who who think, intellectual conversations, who have interesting conversations. I think that is what gives me energy. I'm not
Wow.
at all as, I cannot function as an island. So COVID was very hard for me because I get my energy from other people.
Oh.
And, I think to answer the three parts of your question, how do I get it? I get it when I'm around people, I'm having conversations with people and,
Oh,
topics, especially topics that interest me a lot. I think that gives me a lot of energy and sort of sparks my creativity. How do I
beautiful. So we're going to have no more interesting topics on this platform uh, very
Absolutely.
often.
And that's why I love this platform because conversations have that, that power to actually spark creativity in people. And I think that's how I keep it, like, engaging in conversations like these with folks. That's how I keep going. And I think when I lose it, it happens a lot. When, let's say, I'm working from home at a stretch and
Yeah.
not had people interaction for, say, a week or 10 days at a time. I actively look out for, say, a meetup or some gathering that's happening, or say, even a book read that's happening in a city park, right? So it's just going for that, being around those people sort of brings back that energy when it starts
Beautiful.
going on.
Awesomeness. So, so that's really nice. So, to dive into our topic for today. So, what first drew you towards product management and agile?
Nice. I think I I'm a creative person, but also my favorite subject has been mathematics just because of the way throughout my life. It's because the way, you problem solve there. I think that's what
Yeah,
excites me about, product management as well from the beginning is,
perfect.
it's very, you've got a new problem to solve every day, and there is no one rule. So you have you have the potential to go on applying creativity every single day. I know a lot of people say that, they love building products, they love seeing things go live. That is very much true. But for me, I think the real thrill is that, I don't know what problem I'm going to come up with. So,
Okay.
the same feature, I have to think about it for four different
Yeah,
brands. It will work in four different ways depending on who their audience is, right?
right. So solutions differ.
Solutions differ, the way the same, let's say the same drop down has to function in different ways, the same experience has to look different for different brands. And I think that's what makes it interesting, because you can apply logical reasoning, look at data, analyze your data, and then think about how you're going to create a certain feature for the brand that you're working with. I think that's what keeps me, that's what excites me about product management and building
Wow.
products. The fact that you can be creative every single day, and your, mind does not stick into one rut every day.
Right.
I think Agile is sort of a natural segue to product management, right? Because Agile really, that's what actually drew me first, right? When you have to solve a problem differently each time and every single
Mm.
day, Agile is like the best way to do it, right? Because
Okay.
it allows you that flexibility that, when I don't know what I'm doing, I can think in a way and iterate and then get that feedback, analyze the data. So that Agile is like, it naturally allows for that. I think that's how sort of that's what drew me towards product management and agile.
That's interesting. So solving solutions for different problems.
Yeah.
So, how do you break down agile for a beginner, especially concepts like sprints, product backlogs, or the role of feedback?
Um, well, let's say I feel like think of agile as like managing a house, right? Uh,
Okay,
so I can actually equate it, for example, because you work in small, fast cycles.
mm,
So let's say when you're managing a house, you don't try to get everything done in the same way. So if I have to draw
right.
parallel, right, sprints are short work periods, let's say, where you are building something usable, very much like, you don't go and try to clean the entire house in one go. You say, this week I'm
Uh,
going to focus on this area. I'll do, let's say, clean this. I'll do the groceries this day. And you just
okay,
try to go on doing certain things in a certain week. And that's how sprints are. You've got short work periods where you're building and rolling out something that's of use, right? It's not just, something half baked and you've left it there. Think of again, if I take the same parallel, right? You've got always a running list of chores that you have to do at home, right? You
yeah,
have to do something has to be repaired, something has to
yeah,
be
the work from
ordered.
home stories.
Correct. So those are your stories, and you will always prioritize, right? You will say, what has to be done right now, what's most urgent for me, and what is going to have the maximum impact, right? So if I can leave the laundry because I don't need it right away, I'll probably look at something that's a leaking tap, right, to repair, right? So
Right,
that's my
right.
product backlog, right? It's like
Uh,
a
okay,
prioritized to-do list of features and tasks. That's my product backlog. And I would say feedback, I think, is very important because that's the crux of Agile, right?
okay,
That's what makes it iterative. Feedback is where after every sprint, you are reviewing the results with, your users or your client or your
okay,
sometimes even, closed user groups or alpha users, and then adjusting what has been built. So again, you clean and then you see, okay, what is missing? What have I missed out? Something still is messy, or there's something that a family member needs and it has not been done properly, so we need to adjust the next week's plan, right? So next
okay.
week I should do these things first. So that's feedback, where you're taking the feedback after every sprint from your end users or people who are impacted,
Mm,
with whatever you've rolled out, the tasks that you have done, and then you calibrate what you need to do in the next sprint based on that. So that's why
okay.
I think I would break down agile. It's just working in small, fast cycles that are iterative. And yeah, that's it.
So feedback is basically, getting the final finish of the house.
Absolutely. Feedback is like, that's what helps you calibrate that, feedback is a continuous process. So I would never say it's final, right? Feedback will come after every sprint, right? And that's what eventually helps, you take it back, put it back into the product backlog, and then, that influences what you're building in the next sprint. So you're continuously improving on the product you're building. So that's
Okay.
how, yeah, that's how feedback
So feedback is the final finish of the house that you
of a
would
particular
continue
sprint.
of a particular
Of
sprint,
a particular
where you'll be continuing to work.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Wonderful. So, what are some misconceptions about agile that you often encounter?
That's a very, very good question because it's something we frequently encounter also, right? Like I play like a solution consultant role oftentimes, right? Where, we're talking to our clients or talking to our leaders about,
Hmm.
how we're going to use Agile. And certain, common statements I hear is, it's only for tech. So that's not true, actually. You can use Agile in marketing. You can even use it in HR, right? At our organization, in one of the organizations I worked at, we implemented it very, very successfully in HR, right? You can
Wow.
use it in FinOps, right? Because it's a cyclical process, right? It's a process of, you think, you execute, you test it, you learn it, and then you improve it, and you keep doing that in a loop. So it works very well in marketing HR. So, it's only for tech is a misconception I hear very frequently, and that's not true,
Hmm.
actually. I think the other one is also, that there's no planning. You don't need any planning if you're agile, right? Let's just plan for the next sprint and
Okay.
we're done. But and we don't need documentation, right? Because it's agile. Everything is in the stories, in the user stories or the product backlog.
Hmm.
That's again actually not true because you do need to plan.
Planning and strategy is across platforms, right? Or
Correct. So
across domains to be.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you always have, like, even, we first always define a product strategy, right? We call it the crawl, walk, run methodology, right? You decide what you want over the next 3 months, you decide what you
Hmm.
want over the 3 to 6 months horizon, and the 1 year horizon, and then the next 2 years horizon. What is it that you need? And then based on that strategy, we actually do a continuous planning, right? So agile involves continuous planning. So it's not like, there's no planning, because it has to, we're still always sticking to, a high level product strategy that you're executing for, and that documentation. There is always a lot of documentation, actually, and that's useful documentation. Yes, we don't create documentation for the sake of creating it, but we create documentation that's useful. So you would always still have architecture diagrams, for example, or you would still have implementation roadmaps, right? And release plans and project plans, right? So those would
Hmm.
still be there, right? Milestones, calling out milestones. So I think that's the other big misconception I often come across is, there's no planning and you don't have any documentation. It's just a chaotic world. Just keep doing some work and then keep doing it sprint on sprint. But that's not true. You do have continuous planning, you have useful documentation, and it's structured and it requires a lot of discipline.
Ah, okay. Interesting. So, what are the simple agile practices every small business can start with?
Um, I would say always keep a task list, or what we call as a product backlog, right? Keep that visible to all your team members. So let's say you're a small business of maybe around 50 employees. I'm taking, 11 to 50 employees. And we've done this very successfully where we used to actually have a whiteboard in office, which would have
Okay.
stations with lanes in it, and that would move every single day, right? So everybody's tasks are visible to everyone. Everyone knows what's on the backlog, what's in the to-do list. I think that's very important, and that's something that helps small businesses a lot. I can talk from personal experience, right? We were a small gaming company, and that used to help, right? Just knowing that who's doing what. So keep that visible task list or product backlog with their statuses marked. I think the other one also, small businesses have to move very fast, right? So you don't have the luxury of large budgets, or you don't have the luxury of time, right? I can't say, I'm going to have like 4 week sprints and ship out something at the end of 4 weeks. That's normally not practical for a small business because you need to
Okay.
show impact very quickly. So I would say the second most important thing is make sure you're delivering small, usable improvements regularly, preferably within
Okay.
a week, right? So again,
Okay.
that gaming startup I spoke of, right? So we used to make sure we were shipping out something every end of the week, right? So it was
Okay. So,
1 week
can
sprint.
you bring in your storytelling into that, no, small, can you just let us know on a story on how this actually, goes about for a layman like anybody?
Okay, so let's say again, maybe, if you're doing a to-do list again, right? So, and you want to, you want to make an impact. So you're a small business. Assume you're a small business and you're creating maybe, I don't know, diaries, right? Handmade diaries. So,
Okay.
you want to show that there's continuous progress, and let's assume you're bootstrapped, right? You're
Okay.
running on your own funds, so you have to keep a very close watch on where you're spending your money, right? So this is
Hmm.
something we also practiced when we were building Telltale, right? Our sprints would always be, so we would at the start of the week look at all the tasks that we had to do within that week, start that, and make sure that by the end of the week we had some incremental change on the website. So in let's say again drawing the parallel to a small business that's creating handmade diaries, you are
Hmm.
making a change, or you're making, let's say you have decided your task list says, you need to ship out, say, 100 handbound notebooks at the end of the week, and then you need to talk to maybe, a cloth, and finalize the deal. Maybe those are the two tasks. Keep your backlog very small for each week, and then at the end of it, track, right? What do you need to do? So again, like when we were doing Telltale, we used to make sure that at the end of the week we were shipping that and gathering the feedback. So I think
Ah.
the three things that probably for any small business when they're trying to apply Agile, the most three critical things are: one, keep a very small backlog of tasks that you need to do every week. B,
Okay.
second is make sure you are delivering and keeping very small sprints, like just keep your task list weekly and revise your task list and revisit your task list every week, and then collect feedback very frequently, because that makes a lot of difference, right? Like don't wait for weeks to go and send a survey to your users and then gather
Hmm.
feedback. Do that very fast. So if you're a small business, that will help you build the right thing for your users and not build something that you are assuming is right.
Yeah, assumptions.
Yeah.
So, working on, I think, every detail of whatever you spoke. So that's a real nice, story. So you work across global enterprises, mid-sized firms, and startups. So how has each environment shaped your approach to product management?
I think I would say that the core fundamentals remain the same, right? You plan, you execute, you ship, and then gather feedback. What changes is the teams that you have got at the resources, I would say, that you've got at
Hmm.
your disposal, right? So if when we were, for example, I'll probably take three examples. One, which was absolute startup, which was our own, which was Telltale. We were just five members in the team, right? And we were trying to manage everything between us. Uh,
Ah,
then I'll talk about Spice Labs, which is like, the gaming small company that, we scaled up the number of team members, but it was still not, it was something, and we had millions of users, right? So we were creating,
ah,
at Spice Labs, we were creating games that had lots of users. The impact was huge. So, the scope for making mistakes was very less, right? And then the current firm I am at, right, Material has, like, it's a large firm. You've got lots of team members. So a typical Scrum team would go up to 10, 12. Also, sometimes I've even worked with like 15 member strong teams, right?
okay.
So just and Scrum teams are normally never beyond 15, right? That's like the cap, right? An agile team should not. That's what going to keep it agile, right? So for I would say, when we were in Telltale, it was
Hmm.
lean, right? So we used to follow the principles I just said, right? Very short task lists,
Okay.
prioritizing very, very carefully,
Doable.
sure that whatever we're picking up is doable within this week and can be
Hmm.
shipped at the end of the week. When we were in a mid-sized firm, what became more important was not just the backlog, but also the feedback part of it, right? Because there were more people to whom that feedback had to be distributed. So we
Okay,
could gather
collected.
it,
Hmm.
analyze it, and I had to make sure that I've analyzed and shared it out with the rest of the team by the next sprint start, which meant,
Ah,
because the team size grows bigger, sometimes honestly, that is the difference that I find is when the teams start becoming bigger, there is more chance for feedback to get lost, right? So we
ah.
have to make sure
Because
that
you cannot take it from everybody at the same time. You'll have to implement it as well, right?
correct. So you have to take it, take all the feedback, synthesize it, make sure, you're putting it back into next sprint's backlog, and you are distributing to the right people, or all the people are picking up the right tasks so that, you're
Hmm.
able to refine it in the next week. So I think for me, what's been different for each of these organizations has been the same thing, that it's the team size and the time you spend on the, analysis of feedback becomes different. And I think the other thing is also, just the budget and the scope for error, right? When you're a
Okay.
very small team and you're just picking up, let's say, two or three things, your velocity of working is low, fast, the margin of error is very, very less, right? Because you don't have other team members. There's maybe just two people doing all the tasks. So the
Hmm.
margin of error is very less. So yeah. So that's, I think, that's what
Okay.
is different.
Okay. All these interesting topics. So I'm sure, a lot of us would get it as a recall to what we already know or like something new. What are the key building blocks of a strong product organization?
I would say the first most important building block for any organization are the people, right?
Okay.
For product organizations, especially, you need people who are empathetic, who can understand users, especially where, with AI. There are a
Mhm.
whole lot of tools that can synthesize. There's
Okay.
so many AI tools that will synthesize the feedback. So at one point
Right.
in time, like I was telling you, right, Spice Labs
Yeah.
feedback came in, we had to manually synthesize and decide, what do we
So
prioritize.
did AI help?
At that time, we didn't have AI. Now we have, right? So
Ah,
now the work has become much easier, right? In a way, because
yeah,
I
yeah,
know, I've got, like, let's say I've got 20 items of feedback. I can put that
yeah,
into an AI, I can put it into a Gemini or a Claude and say,
definitely.
what's the
So
most priority?
a conversation can be a base for
Yeah,
AI, but I'm
yeah.
sure it's not going to answer the questions.
It won't. And that's where
Uh,
the human becomes important. So that's why I said, the most probably the strongest, for any product development organization, especially the strongest building block is actually the people. Because product managers, I think one of the core skills that they need to have is empathy and understanding of people
okay.
behaviors. So you need
Hmm.
to have people who can understand behaviors of different kinds of people. So, for example, if I
Okay.
have a product, a teenager is going to use it very differently from, say, a 60-year-old, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I have to make sure it's
definitely.
personalized for both of them, because I
Right.
cannot roll out the same thing. And personalization in today's date is key, right? I mean, even if I'm watching a
Yeah.
Netflix, right? I want to make sure that if I'm getting into Netflix and let's say my son is getting into Netflix, we all have, things that are relevant.
Different pathways that has to go.
Absolutely. So I think and that can only be done. AI can't do that. And, AI is still not there where it can actually
Okay.
understand
Okay.
behaviors of different archetypes of people, and
Right. It
then
can give you some result, but it needs validation.
absolutely, it has to be validated, and that's where I think the key building block for any product organization are the people, people who are empathetic, people who understand behaviors. I think the other key building block is also, to have the right, the frameworks, the processes in place, right? Like I said, just being able to measure, right?
Okay.
I've seen so many product organizations, building a product without
Hmm.
actually validating whether their end users really need it. So it's built
Okay.
on an
So
assumption.
where does the idea come from then?
So the idea comes that, let's say, you just think that, I have seen this need in, say, 50 people. right? I've,
Mm,
I've had 50 people talking to me. They've all said, yeah, it's great. We would love to see that, right? But when you actually start designing that product and then you roll it out,
mm,
is there an audience? Is that just 50 people that you spoke to? But is there also going to be like 5 lakh people who are going to actually use it?
mm,
Right. So your
mm.
research makes it a make is very important, of course, that you cover larger audiences, understand, what people want and build that. I think a lot of product organizations and how we do that is normally, deciding what is our performance indicators upfront. How are we going to measure success of this product, right?
Okay.
And
Mm.
making sure that you have planned it out. I have conversations with multiple people who say, we've built it out, and we know there's a need for it in the market. And when I ask them, and when I'm like, let's say I'm mentoring product managers, I ask them, why do you say, how are you going
Okay.
to at the end of, say, you're telling me you're going to take 3 months to build this. How are you going to build at the end of 3 months? How are you going to measure this is successful, right?
Right. Right.
So I think that measures of success, right, and being able to empathize. I'll maybe just take an example. Again, trying to tell a story around it is we
Beautiful.
one of our clients who's an NGO, for example, and
Okay.
we're having this conversation some time back with that, where they said, oh, we want to personalize the experience on our app for our for our users. So
Oh,
users would be typically, people who are coming for giving donations or for volunteering
right.
work, or they might be looking for some information, right? Like where's the community center, etc. So typically these kind of users are there. And,
Okay.
we want to make sure the whole journey for them is personalized. So we have an app, we've got a website, and then we've got emails that we send out to everybody, and we want to make sure everything is personalized. I was like, okay, great. But do you know if they want personalization? How are you going to validate that, right? How do you know that they need personalization? So, like,
Mm,
no, no,
mm.
we know everybody needs personalization, right? And the parallel they gave me was Netflix. They're like, see, Netflix, when you go to Netflix, I was like, yes, Netflix is great, but Netflix people go for a different reason, right?
Right.
For
Right.
an NGO site, I'm not going to go there twice a day,
Ah,
right?
yeah.
So,
Maybe
how
if
do
there is a need, then you'll step. But
correct?
then Netflix is an entertainment.
Correct.
So,
Correct. So that's where that people being able to understand people, that empathy, right?
ah,
So when I brainstormed this with my product managers, we all were like, I don't think we need to personalize it. Yes, maybe we need small interventions, but we don't need like a whole journey of
okay.
personalization
It need not
across
be a
and
secret.
everything. So it wouldn't, because then they would do it and they would not get an ROI, which becomes a very
Yeah,
different return on impact would not be there, right? So that
correct. And we'll have to justify that at the end of the
yes,
product.
exactly. So that's where I think that people understanding people is the key building block, really, for any product organization.
Beautiful. That example was marvelous. So, in times of continuous disruption, what does it take for individuals and organizations to truly future-proof themselves?
I think, and maybe this sounds repetitive also, I think future proofing is not possible anymore, right?
Ah,
You cannot
okay.
say you
Really?
want to future proof yourself because we're seeing disruption every day, right? I
Okay.
mean, you
Yeah.
wake up every morning, there's something new happening, either
In different forms.
in different forms. I think there's something in technology, something in geopolitics, something in climate, so there's something new, something that disrupts your plans every single day, right? So I think I'll talk about it because you said individuals and organizations. I think I'll answer it in two parts. So I think for individuals, the biggest
Future proof.
important thing that they have to, sorry?
I said the future proof for individuals.
Future proof. I think future proof is not something, but I think we as people, as individuals, we need to build that resilience, right?
Ah,
Going to bed thinking that yes, tomorrow is going to be different. I have to be so resilience comes in two shapes, right? One is
mm,
saying, oh, whatever is going to come, I'm going to handle it, I'll decide on the spot. The other is when, as an individual, I have multiple plans of action or
Mm.
anything, right? So if tomorrow I know, I'll take a very simple example. Tomorrow I know if I'm going to go to the gas station and I'm not going to get I won't get CNG for my car. I need to have
Okay.
a backup plan that, okay, if I'm not able to get my tank full,
Mm.
how do I
Mm.
get to office, right? So I need to
Right.
have plan B, plan C. I think that's something important. I think resilience for everybody, just building that resilience. And I think our generation lacks it a little. I think our parents,
Of
grandparents were
course, yes, but
naturally resilient because they didn't take things for granted, right? So I think as
no,
individuals, we need to bring that
their
resilience.
methodology was completely different. Our methodology had to be different, and I'm sure our next generation or like the future generations methodology is going to be totally different.
Absolutely. And I think that resilience is super important, right? Because,
Mm.
just being able to not take everything for granted and
Mm.
having backup plans in mind as individuals, right? So if not this, what do I do? Because see, I mean, for all we know, we can go to work tomorrow morning and say, you're not in this job anymore, right? So then what's my
Yeah,
plan B, right?
I think that's
So
common these days.
absolutely, right? So I think that resilience as individuals is important. And I think even at an organization level, right,
Mm.
to a certain extent, that resilience needs to become part of the culture of the organization, right? As
Okay.
people. I think
Mm.
one thing, and that's part of building the people culture within the organization, that, you're telling people, and I think within organizations, to your question on, what does it take for organizations to future proof. I think I'll take the example of Shrijan, right, which was the company I was at before it got merged, it acquired by Material. I think the one thing we had as part of our work culture was
Mm.
transparency. So, which meant
Okay.
something's going wrong. I'm going to talk about it, tell it to people, and the work culture was built in
Be
such a way
transparent.
that
Okay.
I knew that I would not face any repercussions even if I'm making a mistake. Even if I'm making a huge
Mm.
mistake, I knew that I would have the support to fix it, right? I think
Okay.
in these times, it's very important for organizations to build that trust in their employees, that,
Mm.
be
Mm.
transparent with your peers, with your managers, with your clients, right? If you're in a client facing.
Yeah, the fear of losing actually
Yes.
also, puts you into various other thoughts.
Correct, correct. But actually, that works against the right culture we need right now to be able
Mm.
to future proof. Because only when you're transparent can you have very honest conversations about, okay, this plan didn't work. Now what do we do? Right? If people are afraid of speaking up in an organization,
Mm.
right, and that culture of fear exists, people will not be able to contribute to, future proofing yourself, right? Because they will not be able to contribute and say, okay, no, let's collaboratively think about if this goes wrong, what do we do, right?
Mm.
Like,
Mm.
I'll again maybe take a small example, right? Let's say, if tomorrow one of our key clients pulls out, right, and says, oh, for whatever reason, geopolitical reasons or something, we won't be able to continue working with you, even though we like to, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I think, as a services organization, it would take a hit. Any organization would take that hit. But
Mm.
what does that do? If you've got that, that culture of transparency, you would collaboratively sit down and say, okay, the client has said no. Now what do we do? What do we, let's think about what we can do as plan B. That's the resilience part of it. And, we look at it also the reasons that why did the client say no? Is it just because he's given us a reason of this thing, or is there something else that went wrong from our side? So if we are transparent about maybe some things that we may have done wrong, or maybe why did we not see this risk coming, that the
Uh,
client might leave, right? So that's transparency. So let's say the lead says that, oh, I didn't see this risk that
mm.
the client might
Mm.
pull out for XYZ reasons. I think
Okay.
then that transparency and that culture of being honest about everything, I think that is very important, because that's when that's from where collaboration can build up, right? And that's
Emotions
important
play
right
a
now.
great role.
Yeah, that's most important right now.
Wonderful. So, I think any topic you touch upon, there are similar, touch points. So, moving to the other side of you, when do you feel most connected to yourself while reading, writing, or creating?
I think it's while I'm writing.
Ah,
And it's very funny because uh, when I'm writing, it's like, sometimes I lose track of time. I would sit down to write something and, I'll realize that, okay, I've already spent about 2 hours on this, right? So I think I feel most connected because that's the one place I can lose track of time. Up to a certain point when I was a youngster, I would read like that. When I would be reading, I would like totally, I would even forget to go have my meals, etc. But now I think
ah,
it's more writing. I still read a lot, but I think it's when I'm writing that I'm most connected because that I get into like that meditative state.
okay. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
different people touch on different thought process.
Yeah, and I
So,
like to say, I remember a conversation with, one of my colleagues where he said, I read everything. So I like to say I write everything. So like writing, from writing stories to articles to textbooks,
okay,
right? Creating exercises. I think I write whatever comes to my mind,
okay.
really.
So, are your books on publications?
Yes, yes. I've
Okay,
got one short novel that's published. It's available on
okay,
Amazon.
okay.
Called it's a short fiction thriller,
Mm.
and then
Mm-hmm.
there are a couple of textbooks for middle schoolers that I have. Uh,
Ah,
yeah, that I've written.
understand it.
So
So,
yeah.
a little bit about the short story.
The short story, it's a mystery thriller. It came to me.
Mm.
I mean, the idea came to me. It's
Okay.
very funny because I get
Mystery
a lot of.
thriller. So mystery thriller means, is it a ghost story?
No, it's not a ghost story. It's not a ghost story. It has elements of mystery in it. It's a thriller and it's got a twist at the end of its
Okay,
story, right? But I don't want to give out spoilers. So anybody wants
definitely.
to
You
read,
shouldn't.
it's
Yes.
available for free on Kindle, so anybody
So
can go
what is the
and read it.
name of the title?
It's called Sands That Shifted,
Oh,
and it's a story that's based in Egypt.
ah.
It's about two archaeologists.
So did
Uh,
you go to Egypt to write it?
No, but I love reading about countries, and Egypt
Wow.
is one country I had deeply researched on and read
Wow.
about before writing this book. There is a sequel I'm working on, which is set in another country, and I will not divulge which that is, but there's a sequel to the
Wow.
book as well, because the
So have
first,
you ever visited Egypt?
no, I haven't visited Egypt. It's on my
Ah.
to-do list, but I've never visited. I would love to visit.
Okay.
I feel a
Okay.
connection with the place. I would definitely love to.
So
Uh,
then let's plan that.
yes, absolutely. I would love to. We can have some great conversations on the way. I would love to.
Oh
Uh,
yeah. Done. Super
yeah,
nice.
yeah.
So sands of the dust.
Sands that shifted.
Sands that shifted. Lovely. So I remember Telltale as a beautiful space for stories. So how did it begin? And how has it transformed over years?
How did it begin? It was nothing flashy. It was a very, very simple endeavor. When my son was, I mean, like we have a history of stories being told in our family. Like I grew up with my grandmother, my mother telling us stories. My
Oh yes.
grandmother was like one huge treasure trove of stories. She would tell us, she would cook up stories and talk to us, tell those to us. So I think somewhere my aunt would do it. I still recollect my aunt telling us, she would cook up stories of ghosts. So she would have like a booth story and a strawberry booth story. So I think that somehow that tradition has always lived in our family. And when my son was, he was able to start understanding stories, I started telling him stories. I think even before he started to talk a lot, I would just tell him and, cook
Okay.
up stories for him. I think somewhere around, along the way, I felt that, I should just write that down somewhere. So I started a blog
Of
where I
course,
would
you
start
love
writing
writing.
all these small stories that I would create for him. And initially it was just on Blogspot, and after a while, I just my somebody, one of my friends, he gave me the idea. He was like, "Why don't you just get your own domain name and let." Why don't you just publish it out so you have a brand name instead of like just your name dot blogspot.com. So
Right.
we were hunting out for, and at this around the same time, call it serendipity or whatever, people were reading the stories on Blogspot, and a couple of folks actually reached out saying, "Hey, can we contribute?" we also have stories that we have. Can we, send those to you and you can
Wow.
publish it there? So
Okay.
I still remember the conversation with my mother where I was like, I'm getting these requests from people who want to send in their stories, and I'm also thinking that I want to give this
Yeah,
website a
of
name,
course.
the blog a name, and she was like, yeah, I mean, because if they're telling stories, let's just call it Telltale.
Ah.
And so I was like,
It's
yeah,
a
that's
very
a nice.
pretty, it's a very pretty name, no?
Yeah. So that's how Telltale started. And, at one point, people started, it started getting popular, especially among parents and educators. It is still very popular. A lot,
Ah.
almost 80% of the audience who comes to the site, even till today, are parents
Mm.
or educators, right? When I say educators, it is
Wow.
teachers who are
Mm.
looking for stories. There are publishers who are looking for stories for their textbooks who come to the site. I think over time it just grew on its own. We started with two more contributors apart from myself, and then we grew to about 120 at one point,
Wow.
and who were active contributors sending in their.
Wow.
So there's like a collection of about 580 stories on the website,
Oops.
and
Wow.
of course, I wanted to make sure that, we always maintain that quality because a lot of we realized when we looked at our analytics data along the way, maybe about 2 years down after it started, when I started actively looking and tracking the analytics data of who is reading, how are they reading, which are our top stories, I
Mm.
also realized there was a lot of teenage population, young children who were coming in, who were doing their home
Yeah.
assignments and all looking for stories, they were also coming into the site. And then we started getting, children contributors, right? So there are also
Wow. Yeah.
stories by children on the site, which is when, that gave us the idea that why don't we run, competitions, story writing competitions for children. And
Ah,
we
okay.
ran for almost a couple of years. We actually ran every quarter, every 3 months, we would run a story writing competition, which was
Ah,
sponsored by brands
yeah,
and
yeah.
all. So that's how it sort of grew there.
Wow.
And then, I think it has always been like, organic evolution. So we've never spent on advertising the site per se, but we've sort of organically grown by word of mouth. So then we,
Wow.
at some point, we had, publishers, I can't name them right now, but publishers reaching out to us and saying, hey, we want to use one of these stories by so and so contributor for our textbook,
Beautiful.
right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
then we started getting into like copyright, copyright with some of these publishers, and where they started using these stories for their sites, for their textbooks. I think that's how we sort of organically grew, and I think the next wave is going to be incorporating AI. So we're going to I'm just giving you a peek preview into what's coming.
Definitely. Of course. So the base for AI is already strong, and there, no, 580 is a beautiful number. So,
But now the next step of growth that we have planned, that I've planned for Telltale, is allowing parents and educators to actually create their own stories. So if you look
wow.
at a particular story, and you want to modify it for yourself, we'll allow you to do that. Obviously, it's going to be AI generated content, so it'll always
Okay.
go with that disclaimer
Uh-huh.
about accuracy and all. But yes, that's the next wave, that we'll allow you to create your own stories on the site using prompts. So it's going to
Wow.
be
Very
built.
nice. Beautiful.
Thank you.
So, what role does storytelling play in shaping individuals and communities?
That's an excellent question. And I think along all through history, right, storytelling is what has shaped not just individuals, but entire communities, entire cultures, right? Storytelling is a part of it, came in even before the written word, right? Storytelling,
Uh,
verbal storytelling came in even before,
right.
people actually started
Yeah. I
writing,
think
right?
listening is a great skill,
Yes.
and
So I
listening
really
to continuous conversation.
correct, absolutely. And I think when we talk about growth of individuals, you're absolutely right, right? Listening is a key skill that storytelling teaches, right?
Right.
Being able to sit and listen to a story for an hour or half an hour itself teaches you patience. And I've
Yeah.
seen that
Yeah.
when we used to do workshops for kids, right? It teaches you patience. It teaches you active listening, right? Because you're
Mm.
not zoning out when somebody is talking, right? You're actively listening to them, right? I think that's a very, very key skill. And I think that comes in handy, right? Even whether you're working, whether you're engaging in a society, I think that's most important is active listening skills, which is what storytelling teaches, right? Or rather, being part of storytelling teaches. And I think it just shapes culture, right? At a community level. I
Mm.
think it has the power to shape cultures and how they behave. So a simple thing, maybe, because we're still in March, I will say that, a simple thing about how women are treated in a society, it
Mm.
can be shaped by storytelling, was shaped by storytelling, right? So
Okay.
a very
Okay.
simple thing is like,
Yeah.
how many of our students today know about, great women in our
Mm.
culture, in our history, who
Yeah.
were educators or,
Right.
were academicians, right? Gargi,
Correct.
Maitre, how
So
many of these
women,
stories?
women silently did their job, made history, and left. And
But
then
the
how do
thing
we know
is that
about them?
there is stories, and they've had, like, they have had an impact on our Vedas also, right? Like
Mm.
they created parts of the Vedas, right? But that somewhere, while they were part of stories, and like I was telling you about my grandmother who would tell us stories, right? And these were stories she used to tell us, right? Which obviously means that it has gotten handed down from somewhere, right? But they've gotten lost. So I think storytelling plays a very, very crucial part in
Okay.
shaping communities, shaping societies, right? And just keeping the culture of, of a society running. And I think that's something, I mean, even as a parent, I would say that, that's something that every parent should follow, right? It takes like
Okay.
10 minutes a day if you can give to your child, telling him or her a story, right? It could be
Ah,
made up, it could be something that you've heard, it could be now we've got Instagram. It has so much more power, actually one-on-one
in
telling a story
shaping
to
individuals.
somebody than just watching a video on an Instagram. There's so much more power to it, actually.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So to, go to the last end part of our conversation. For a young learner just starting out, what is one habit or mindset that can help turn ideas into a meaningful impact?
Um, I think for a young learner, or somebody who is just starting out, I think the most important thing is, like I said, one habit is that one needs to develop is listen more, right? Listen to your users if you are starting a business.
Okay.
Uh, Listen to yourself if you are a student, right?
Okay.
Something I keep telling my son all the time, right? Now he's all grown up, but I keep telling him that, and this is where also something that we spoke when we were talking about the agile is the feedback, right? Give yourself feedback, right? That should be the only thing that you measure yourself with, right? Your own feedback, right? Did I do the best I could, right? So for a young learner who's, let's say, a teenager, still a student, I think that's most important. Give feedback to yourself, very honest feedback, because nobody else is listening to it, so you're not worried, right?
Yeah.
For somebody who's just starting out, say in a business or in a career, I think the most important thing is listen to people, observe them, observe how they think about you, and then also think. I think the second most important habit is always think in terms of the impact you can create, right? Because that
Ah,
gives you the energy and the motivation, right? Because if you're
okay.
able, like, I had a guide, unfortunately he's no more, but he was an amazing person, and he would always say, visualize yourself there. Yeah, it gives
Ah.
you that motivation to get there, right? So I say this to my mentees also, think about, so if you're a performer, right, at some
Okay.
point now.
What's the impact you want to make and visualize
Exactly,
yourself?
right? So where do you want, if you're a performer, you're, let's say in the creative arts, right? Imagine yourself on stage and imagine, everybody, you're doing
Ah,
a great job, right? And then that will give you the motivation to get there. Don't just be focused on the task you are doing, but focus on, where are you trying to, what's that end result or the impact that you're trying to create. I think for anybody who's, who's starting out in their career or who's starting out a business, I think active listening and, just feedback to get to that impact that you want to create is most important.
Wow, beautiful. So thank you so much, Aru, for this beautiful time and your evening spent on this conversation. Look forward to many more conversations.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure, and I loved all the questions. I think really well, good choice of questions, and it brought back some great memories for me. So, thank you so much for inviting me to this, Aprajita.
Sure. All right. Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.